All right, welcome back to episode 25 of the Precious Metal Gens podcast. I'm Zan here with Brian, and tonight we're doing a collector conversation with one of the guys who has one of the best player PCs of a defensive player that I've seen. Gino, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. We knew we wanted to get you on, and Brian did the labor. He's promised you many riches in exchange for your presence here. So we're we're happy you're on. So tell me a little bit about kind of when you first started collecting, how you got into cards generally, and then sort of your journey through it and how that eventually led to collecting Woodson.
Yeah, sure. Let's see, 1991 Fleer, blue, the blue basketball 1991 Fleer. My dad would come home and he'd bring a pack of like cards home, and it was like kind of like every day looking for dad to come home with a little 20% pack of blue Fleer basketball cards. It was like a instant, like I was hooked. Like it was kind of like what I was into for sure. And then kind of Penny Hardaway, Sean Kemp. It was really a basketball heavy early. And then kind of through that journey, because this is I'm 39, so I'm like 12 years old, going to the card store that was by school after school. This is all kind of 1996 kind of era. And it was just kind of like where we all hung out in my hometown. Like all my group of buddies, we'd get out of class, we'd go to the local card store. We were friends with Mike, the card shop guy. It was just kind of like those memories. Like, and it was just kind of like, it always would go back to cards. And like my good group of buddies, we would have trade parties. I'll bring our binders over. It was like what we did. From there, 97, 98, got into football. And when the football cards started, it was the perfect storm. It was like I'm from Michigan. Michigan had just won the national championship. Charles Woodson is like the peak athlete of the era. Peyton Manning is the best quarterback. The draft class was incredible. So it was just kind of like that 97, 98 era. My age, I thought Charles Woodson was just such a cool dude. I wanted to be like him, to emulate. So it was just kind of like, that was like where it started, like with football cards. It was like the perfect storm, being from Michigan, all that kind of stuff. It just kind of, it made sense, I guess is the way I would say it. Like, and then the cards were amazing. It was just, as we all still collect, 98 was the year, I think, for football for sure. Basketball was a little before that. And yeah, kind of that was like where the football interest. Ironically, I didn't collect Charles Woodson. I collected Randy Moss because I was a wide receiver. So I collected Randy Moss. Although I liked Woodson, the guy I collected was Moss because he was just, stud, and so to kind of like go through that's how like the football interest, I think, kind of came in. It started with basketball, and then at the perfect time of when I was finally getting money for chores and stuff like that to buy cards, it was like the football was like what the hot product was. They were like $1 cheaper than basketball too, so you could get more football cards than you could basketball. So it was like, at that time, it was like get as much as you could. So then, getting into high school kind of like settles down a little bit, kind of get into girls and sports and that kind of stuff a little bit more. And I think it was like every 2 years, there was like a good draft class where Michael Vick and Tomlinson come in, and it was just enough to kind of get you back into it. And then, Joey Harrington's the next year, you kind of fall off. And it was like, you kind of went back every other year for a good draft class, but never really like stuck. And then, pretty much when I got back into cards, I think it was actually my brother started collecting. I collected Tomlinson. My brother collected Marshall Falk. And my brother was like, I want to buy Braylon Edwards cards. So it was like the
Nice.
Michigan, it was like Michigan, like was kind of, and we started buying these Michigan cards, and I was kind of helping. I was in college at the time, and we started buying these cards, and I was like, man, Michigan cards rule. Like these are sick. Like there was such a like a connection because I'm such a fan. I was going to Michigan, and it was kind of like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. And then you could go and buy Brady's, and you could kind of buy everybody, but Woodson, you couldn't get the good Woodson cards. It was like Woodson, like you knew what they were, you couldn't get them. So we finally found somebody that was, I think it was on Beckett. Found like on the haves and wants when you go on Beckett Organize and you search for cards. And this one guy had 2 platinum medallions and 2 super raves, and just reached out. We started talking on like a trade proposal, and he sent a price, and at the time it was pretty high. And we bought them. And when we got that card in, it kind of was like, this is different. Like the Charles Woodson cards versus all the other Michigan cards we had been like collecting. It was like, oh wow, this is what we wanted to do. So it was like from that day on, it was like I was kind of helping the social and the finding for my brother's collection, but he would buy it, but he didn't have the time or like the know-how to search through Blowout and Beckett and all that stuff. So I would do all the legwork. He would buy the card, and then I would just kind of enjoy building the collection with him, even though it was, I think at the time, his collection. I was kind of a part of it. So yeah, that's kind of like how it all started. I actually called him earlier today to ask him, like, how did you start collecting Michigan? For some reason, I was like drawing blank on that kind of thing. He's like, Braylon Edwards, platinum medallion, 13 out of 13. It was like that was the card that kind of like kicked off the whole thing. So yeah, man, it was getting that Woodson card when we were collecting Michigan, that it was like that was kind of like the indicator that that's what we wanted to do. And it really started with him. And then my journey kind of like picks up around 2015, 2016. We had doubles of all the cards because we would buy every one. So I already kind of had them, the tough ones to find. We'd already like stacked them up on the side. And I was like, well, I think I'm going to get into it. And so I already had like a pretty good head start on landing some pretty rare ones.
So you spoke a little bit about how you got into Woodson and
Yep.
how that led into your current PC, but like currently now, or in recent time, within the last like 5 years or so, you've kind of perfected your collection, I would say, from looking at what you got, and you focused on specific cards. And what strategies you use to kind of track down these specific cards and these bigger cards in your collection, and then I guess lead into and talk about like what's your end goal with this? Like, what is your, because you're not running around collecting every single Woodson card ever made, but you must have some type of list or some type of end checklist that you're trying to work towards, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So throughout that journey of like the Michigan connections that we were making, was kind of like building kind of a database of collectors, of things that potentially I would want to like talk to, that might know somebody. I've knocked on every door that you can possibly knock on, and usually 99 out of 100, nothing. And I always go back. I always stayed in touch, and it was never. I always tried to like curate relationships with the people that I was talking to, because you never know when maybe they're not selling today, but they might sell tomorrow. And never push them, but always remind them that you're interested. And all those contacts that I had made throughout those years, they all knew people that also were looking. So maybe they didn't know somebody, or they didn't have what you were looking for, but there was a guy that also might have reached out. Because back in the day, it was weird. There was no Instagram, but everybody kind of knew people, and you'd find yourself like talking to the same people because the same people were doing the same thing. They're making the same rounds and touching the same bases. So when it came to like when I started doing it for me, it was like I already had contacts that knew people that they weren't looking for what, but they knew where this stuff was. So it was kind of like an uncovering through those contacts that I had made, over the previous, I would say 7 to 10 years, that it was really like, they were starting to now, like, I don't want to use the word be valuable, but they were now relevant to what I was trying to do for me. Now that now that I was in from with my brother, what he had doubles of, it was like, now that I was there, now it was like time, like, to use those same contacts that I had made to kind of see, what I could find out of those people. And man, it was like home run after home run. Like it was I was so lucky so many times that it was like the person that wasn't selling at all was looking to get out right when I happened to touch base. And what I learned was, one of the most important things is, when someone's selling a collection, don't cherry pick, buy the collection. It might cost a lot. Break it down yourself, sell what you don't want out of it. People that are separating themselves from a collection, they don't want to just sell the big cards out of it and move on. They would rather pass it on to a passionate collector. And I was convincing, in which most of these collections I bought, I've separated a little out of it, but I usually keep the entire collection. It kind of like, I found myself like holding on to the collection and the people, and staying in touch with them. And it was almost like I found like a person I was friends with, that we talk about more than just cards. And I feel like I owe it to them to kind of like maintain their collection as much as I can. Obviously I can't keep everything, but like I've gotten entire collections with cards that like I'm not supposed to have in the amount of time I've been collecting. Like it's not even a good collector that tried like for 20 years shouldn't have the depth of what I have. But because I bought the entire collection, the guy was willing to sell me the cards that otherwise you wouldn't be able to find. So yeah, that's where I would go with that, is like, it was like all those, I think, connections I had, or those points of contact that I had made, and knocking on every door. And if I saw a card on eBay that I was like, this guy has a bunch of 1999 rare stuff, maybe ask him if he has any Woodsons that are like not even close to what he has listed, but just throw a random question at an eBay seller and then out of nowhere, this guy, and actually that's how I found the future. Now the guy had a card that had nothing to do with anything. I have no idea why I asked him if he had any Woodsons, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I do." And he sent me like a list, and I sent him like a list of what I was looking for, and then he just sent me that picture back. And I was like, I was looking for the now, not the future. And he sends me back the now, and I was like, whoa, like what? And I was totally just like blindsided by it. And I just like, I kind of like put my phone down. And actually I found another card that way. I messaged a guy randomly, have no idea why I asked him, and found an NFL Shield patch, just asking if he had any Woodson cards. The guy had no reason to ask him that question, but it just happens to be he pack pulled it. And I was like weird stuff like that had happened so many times. And I'm like, I think it's just, I always knock on the door, and just, you never know what you might find. But yeah, that's that's how that goes.
So since you've had so much luck in recent times with finding these big cards, like, how did you start out? Like, your end goal, what was it originally? How is it morphed now? Like, do you see like, all right, I'm a point where you can actually complete your Woodson PC, or is it something you want to be ongoing?
My goal is, I want every playing day card that's ever been made. I have every base card. I have almost every like national convention card. Like, I have almost everything. Playing days is like the cutoff for me, just because it gets a real messy, like after too many 101s and that kind of stuff. For the modern, I don't prioritize one of ones unless they come and it makes sense. So I'll kind of like push off the one of ones. If there's a good price and somebody's willing to play ball, I'll buy it. But the end goal for me would be, I mean, to get them all. Like I just, I feel like I'm close enough to say that it's possible. Um, but every time I just found an out of 5 national convention scorecard from like 2000, and that I was fired up. I was absolutely gassed up about a score national convention out of 5. Ugly card, 2003, but I mean, it's like I was incredibly fired up about it. Like I found it on like Mercari. I was like, this is incredible. So but that's where I am. I'm a completionist, and that's another reason I picked Woodson. And I think we'll get to that here in a second. There's not a lot of cards. If you try to do this with Manning, you try to do this with Moss, you try to do this with another star, like it's impossible. Like even if you are really, really good, and it's just impossible. And you have to have deep pockets, but also it's just like there's just so many cards. There's no way to really be able to do it. With Woodson, it's like at least conceivable, if you have a good head start.
And like you said, Manning and Moss, and in pretty much in every era, 90s onward, the offensive players get all the love.
Yep.
That's true of the 90s. When you look at 90s guys, Woodson, Reggie White, maybe a little bit of Bruce Smith, but for the most part, it's offensive players. So what
Yep.
about? Tell us a little bit about collecting a defensive player, and how is that different from collecting a popular or even Hall of Fame offensive player?
I'd say the main thing is you can go on eBay any given day and find a nice Peyton Manning card, a nice Randy Moss card, a nice Barry Sanders card. You can always find a collector card. For a person that has a PC, I always say like out of 100 or less is kind of the focus point of like what people are looking for. You can find a nice card of any of those players any given day. And they're great cards, but it's just like you can always find them. I'm Charles Woodson, like there might be a long stretch where you might not see one nice card for 6 months. And if you have an itch to scratch, defensive players you might not be able to. Like that's just how it is. There's just not enough cards of most of the players. I mean, I think Ed Reed's another one I always like look at, is similar. Just great player, super. I mean, but he's not in the insert sets. He's going to get the parallels. He's not going to be in many insert sets. And that cuts out a lot of cards, especially in the 2000s. Like if you're not in the insert sets, there's a whole lot like the jersey cards and all that stuff. Like it cuts you down dramatically. So yeah, I would say that if you're gonna try to collect, it's just you gotta have patience. You got to be in it for the long haul. I don't think it's something that you're gonna build a collection that you can put on Instagram and brag about overnight. It takes time. But if your goal is to show cool cards to people on Instagram, defensive player might not be the route, because for example, a card out of 72 that shiny, that might be the best card you get that year. And it's like, because there's just nothing else to get. And it's like, if that's okay with you, then defensive players, if you're doing it for you, that might be all you need. But if you're doing it for likes, it's not usually the best route to go. That's for sure.
As a Packers collector, I'm always looking for like the Woodson Packers years, and he goes through a pretty deep stretch of being on the Packers where there's really nothing there. Like the best thing you can find is like the 2008 score gold zone or whatever. It's not like that. There's nothing there before Panini really starts making their good sets like Prism and that. They're like this big lull when he first gets on the Packers for like maybe the first like 3 or 4 years when he's really, really good, and they don't have like any cards of him except for like maybe a gold. There's not even, because Topps wasn't even making the right parallels at the time either. So
yeah, it's actually kind of funny. There's a 1 year of Bowman Chrome, 1 year of Finest, 1 year of Topps Chrome. That's it. So you get those. You get one of each, and which I love, because it's like there's only one Finest Green Bay Woodson card. There's only one Topps Chrome Woodson card. There's only one, but it's like there's something about that. So there's 3 superfractors, including the '06 Topps Chrome, which is actually just a airbrushed photo from him on the Raiders. But yeah, it's pretty dope. Like I think it's cool that there isn't every single set, every single parallel, every it kind of adds that that little bit of flavor um, to just having one card to focus on that year, pretty much, and that's pretty much what it is. It's like there's one good card in 2009, one good card in 2008, one good card in 2010, and it just kind of like, yeah, it's pretty wild. And Panini, like you said, they start to really like touch on it a little bit, but yeah, for the most part, it's far and few.
So you've got a PowerPoint here that kind of highlights some of the differences between, I guess, some of the premier offensive and premier defensive players, or at least from that class. Is that right?
I do. Yeah, let me hold this up.
Perfect. So people on listening on Spotify or Apple, please check out YouTube video so that you can see this. And Gino's going to walk us through what it is, though.
Yeah, so I put this together after Brian got in touch with me, and I really wanted to kind of put numbers to it. And it's actually kind of funny because I've thought about this for a while, and I was happy that it could kind of like put a little bit of time to pulling these numbers together so I could get like a visual idea of what it looks like. But what I did was I feel like the best way to compare kind of the era of collecting that I think is like the greatest is kind of the Peyton Manning, Randy Moss, and Charles Woodson, like that career. It starts in '98. It ends, right as Panini kind of takes on, so it's got the whole spectrum. It's got the junk era and the kind of like the '06 through '09. Like it's got like a whole bunch of like eras within a career, and it's a very different story from all three. And they're ironically the 3 players that I've collected at one point in my life. So I kind of like knew this, but I didn't actually have like data points to kind of like prove what I already knew. But so now I do because I did this. But the reason I picked these 3 is because obviously what I just said, but it also is like the quarterback type of collector, the superstar offensive player, and then you got your defensive player, and it just puts numbers on basically how many quarterback cards are created versus a star player versus a defensive player. That's what the top total unique cards by year. I've put this together, and you're looking at 85, 60 cards, 49 cards. That's total cards, parallels everything from every year of Charles Woodson. So when it's hard to, there's just not a whole lot to choose from. It's like you kind of got to take what you can get.
It really puts the hobby in perspective too, because it's kind of, I feel like it might be a similar breakdown even now where you get, those quarterbacks and the hype of the quarterbacks. It's probably even exponentially greater now, but if you just look at that 13,912 total, it's like more than double Moss. And then when you get down to Woodson, obviously it's not even close with 1,800 total cards. 1,800 total cards in his card catalog. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. Well, it's in his playing days. So like post playing days, obviously there's a handful there too. But I just wanted to focus on the playing days. But yeah, 1,800. That's all you got. And then
it gets even crazier with the serial stuff.
Yeah. So as you jump into I just did the first 3 years because it was going to be a lot of work to get all the way broke down. But you could probably put it into some kind of, comparing it to the numbers that are above. But yeah, that's what we're dealing with here. There's 132 under 100, which as I said, this is what people tend to look for when they're trying to put together a player collection. It's like it's under 100. It's kind of not just base cards. It's not just simple base parallel type stuff. It's it's the stuff you kind of want to put in a top loader.
So one thing I find really interesting about this, and I think it still goes on today, it's like Charles Woodson had a pretty consistent career. He did have a little bit of a fall off. I know right before he came to Green Bay, that's where people thought maybe he was washed up, and the Packers are getting him at the tail end of his career. Little did they know they just revitalized him, and he had like an entire second half. But if you look at 98, like his rookie year, and really all of the serial number out of 100, and then even 98 for the total cards, you have 514 for Manning, 356 for Manis, and then 275 for Woodson. So for a defensive player who just won Heisman Trophy, um, he's pretty close to Moss. And it's not like, yeah, Manning is double, but Manning was so epic coming out of college. I mean, it was just, again, that was a quarterback. But to be really, I mean, relatively close, but then you really see the separation as the career goes on. I mean, he goes in 2000 alone, he goes 86 total cards made of Woodson and 938 for Manning. So it's kind of like you would look at that and think, oh, well, Woodson just kind of fell off and they just stopped making cards of him. No, these defensive players keep up. These great defensive players keep pretty consistent and do great things, but it's like the companies just kind of slowly stop making cards. And even with the serial number stuff in 99, 134 for Manning, 145 for Moss, and then 49 for Woodson. But if you look before that, it was 90, the splits were 96, 67, and 50, really close. And then they just completely fell off.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely, and I mean, he was four-time first team All-Pro, four-time second team All-Pro. So, I mean, and they were both on like kind of sandwich in his career. So like he had that little like 3 or 4 year, like kind of, he was still good. It wasn't like he wasn't like a player, and he was very popular. But yeah, for some reason and I remember, and I don't know if you remember, there was like this era, and I remember it was like specifically on a Beckett. I'm weird. I remember like weird details. It was like Kendrell Bell was like, they were really trying to push Kendrell Bell as being like this like linebacker that was collectible. And it was like this weird, like, and it was like Kendrell Bell. And it was like, they were talking about defensive players. I just remember Kendrell Bell. They were trying to like ignite like player collecting with defense, and it just wasn't working. There was no marketable defensive players like for the collector in the hobby that they were looking for Kendrell Bell to fill that void. I guess I don't know, man. It was interesting, but it was like around 2003. They were really like digging deep to try to like get defensive players to be collectible, and it just wasn't sticking for whatever reason. I think every home fan that had a good defensive player, that's usually like looking back at it like their favorite player, the Troy Polamalu, like anybody who was like the key defensive player on good teams. They always seem to be the ones that hold like the long-term appreciation of fans. But I don't know why that never translated to in the moment collectability, but it never seemed to do that.
Look at the autos. Three autos from 98 to 2000 compared to 104 from Matt.
Well, here's one better for you. Till 2000, he only has one autograph card, the 98 Bowman, until 2011. He has no autographs except for his rookie Bowman, which has 3 parallels. Until 2011, I think the first autograph that was signed was like a Crown Royal with Panini. He had no autographs with Topps. He has no autographs with Upper Deck, no autograph, like any of it. And I don't know if it had something to do with a player. I have to actually look into that. I'm actually curious, but he has no autographs until 2011.
Wow.
Learn something every day.
Yeah, I'm shocked.
Yeah.
And that auto too, that Bowman auto, I think you could go on eBay right now. They have a few of them sitting on there. They're not that hard to find.
Yeah.
And it's his rookie auto. It's a great looking card. It's on card auto. He's got a great signature, but that's his only auto for that long.
Yep.
And it's crazy. I mean, you can find it relatively easily, and they're not insanely expensive.
Yeah, I think that card, in my opinion, is one of the most undervalued cards, like by far. Like I just the fact that I think the print run is estimated at like 500 for the blue. I think it's 75 for the silver and like 20 for the gold. Maybe like 10 to 20. It depends on how you do the odds based off of like the out of 50 card in the set. But it's about 500, 75, and 20. And the fact that there's like less than 600 total autos for a Hall of Famer who only had one autograph card for 12 years of his career until he was on. So it's his only autograph card of the Raiders in his first stint with the Raiders. If you want to look at it that way, I think it's an incredibly undervalued and underappreciated card for what it's worth.
Why don't you flip to the next one? You got another slide with price value comparisons too, or key card sales.
Yeah. So I also put this together, which was, I think we're at a point in the hobby where key cards are, what we kind of like. We like to see the sales, and if you just take a look here, I think these are, I would say, pretty much the 5, I'd say, key cards of Charles Woodson. And if you look at those,
and if you're listening, you got a 98 PMG, his rookie, the 98 Essential Credentials now, the 98 24 karat, the 98 Bowman Gold auto. That's the one we were talking about with the parallel, and then the 98 Star Rubies. And then you got 33. I mean, Manning is consistently in the teens, and you got 33 for that 98. That 98 PMG, a lot of those sales are recent. I mean, that thing sold, was like the same card sold over and over again.
Yeah.
Moss is typically in the teens. There was only 198 Star Rubies public sale for him. Wow. That's out of, was that out of 30?
Yeah, 35.
Yeah. And then Woodson is all consistently, I mean, all 4s, and then 1-3 for the 98 PMG. But that's the only public sales. No more than 4 for any of those cards all time. Just crazy. It's crazy to think of. And then most of those sales, I mean, you look at them, man, the public sales are since 2020. That's like bringing out the hobby hype, bringing out the cards, right?
Yeah, and that's what I always think is funny is I'll show somebody some of my cards. They're like, "Oh man, when did you get those?" Assuming that I got them a while ago, and I'm like, "No, I mean, like, I couldn't get them back then. Like, I wish I could have, but you couldn't find them. Like, it took the prices to get to a certain point to get them so that you could buy them, and I still don't know where the hell they're at because some of the prices have gotten just unreal high, and you still maybe once a year you'll see one of the cards if you're lucky. Like that's just kind of where I mean, we're at 6 total sales since 2020. That we're going on 5 years.
That's crazy.
And yeah, so
when I picture all of those cards on there, the only thing that comes to mind is your page. Like I don't remember any of them selling. I don't remember seeing any of them on auction on eBay. It's just like it never happens. So you getting the future EC is incredible, but just finding the now is hard enough, right? Because that's out of 58? Is that right?
Yep, 58.
58, yeah. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Well, kind of going back to the story I told a little bit ago, when I reached out to the guy that showed me the future, I showed him I was looking for the now. He shows me the future. I eventually 3 months down the road, we figure out how to like negotiate a deal, which I'll get into, but like he never even told me he had the now. And mind you, I just bought the future from him. I still don't have the now. So I actually, the best part of it is I had the now or the future before I had the now. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, no, I want the now. It seemed like I felt like I like jumped out of order. I felt like I was supposed to have the now first, and then you get the future as like the final piece of the journey. And it turns out to no, I actually got the now after the future, which is kind of funny saying it out loud. I've never really said it that way, but yeah, that's the truth.
So you can take us through. I know the next slides that you have are specific cards mixed in your PC, and then also are there some other ones that you don't have currently on there? But you have a list of different levels or different, I guess, categories of Woodson cards. Why don't you take us through those?
Okay, so when I went to right, first of all, those scans. Look at how good are those scans right now. I took a lot of time to do that to make this slide.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So I kind of like Woodson because of his 98 kind of draft year. It's hard to deny that you could make his top 5 cards all his rookies because they are like they're special cards because of the year, and they're also special because of they're his rookie. So it's like there's a whole lot of reasons why 99% of people are going to say that the rookies are their favorite cards, which I like to separate them into just different categories: his Packers era, his non-rookie Raiders, and then his rookies. So in here, if you look up top, Gem Master, that's me and my brother. We were both the owner of that. That story is wild. Randomly, guy on Blowout back in probably 2012. I was posting on my old name, which I don't even remember what it is now. And I was like looking for Woodson cards. Guy reaches out, says I might have one that you might be interested in. I go, yeah, what is it? That's what it was. And the price that I got that for, I'm not even going to say because it's ridiculous. But yeah, that happened. So that's
ridiculously low or ridiculously high.
So low that I almost feel again like I did something wrong. Even then, mind you, just in perspective, $1,000 in 2000, 10, 11, 12 on a sports card was pretty crazy, right? That was just really high, especially for a football card and especially for a Charles Woodson card. Even though his cards, there were good ones, but even then, that price that he gave me was it was pretty low. Thank you for that. So then, kind of, but yeah, moving along, and then obviously this is what we were talking about, the future. Yeah, and another thing that's kind of funny is most of these nice, not all of them, but most of the nice cards that I've gotten from the one collection, the guy was such a perfectionist, or he had all number 2 out of whatever the serial number was. So they're all 2 of. So any card that had 2 of serial number, that was what he was collecting. He's a big Michigan guy. So when I got his collection, part of his, he had a whole pile of just 2 out of. So this is 2 out of 3 on the future, which is kind of cool because I'm a Michigan fan. It's the only graded copy, and it's 2 out of 3. So
isn't there only? Weren't you saying that there was one of them was destroyed or something? There's only 2 copies of that card.
Yeah. So I reached out when I was looking for I was looking for the regular, the now essential credential, and I talked to a dude who was from the San Antonio area, and he said that he goes, I've seen the future. He goes, and let me tell you, they wanted $1,000 for it back in 2000, and I think he said like the leg was like ripped and like something with it was like peeled, one of the top layers, and the whole thing was just like beat to hell. And I was like, oh wow. And he goes, I still kick myself in the ass for not buying it for $1,000. It's like, this is like in 2000, like he saw it at a card show and it was destroyed, but he was upset that he didn't buy it. So I don't know if that's true. That's what he said. I have to take a man at his word. It's a pretty weird thing to say if not, which that's a whole nother story. But I like to think he's telling the truth. So yeah, I mean, that's obviously a key card. But
Do you know where the other one
I
is?
I don't. That's
Okay.
so. One's apparently damaged. This is the only one I've ever seen. And the funny part is the guy that I bought this from. I bought. Let me see what else is on here. I got that. I got the Futures. I got the Bowman Gold Anniversary. I got the Bowman Auto. Those are the three I got from him, and I guess I got one of one of the nows as well. So he actually acquired the entire so he acquired his entire rookie collection from a different guy who was selling out back in 2001. So it was the original person that got all those cards, sold it all to him. He had been holding on to them, and actually when I reached out to him, he was just pulling his cards out. He hadn't looked at them in 20 some years. So there's people out there that have these cards that are in boxes in their closet that literally haven't been touched in 20 plus years. And that's I can say that for sure because that's how most of these cards were acquired. And I'm still friends with the guy. We talk regularly. We were going to go to the national championship if Michigan would have went. That was part of like the deal that we made was if Michigan went to the national championship, but we lost TCU. But I was going to take him. It's kind of like a thank you kind of notion. We built a pretty good friendship. We talk regularly about just like the state of Michigan football and whatnot. So yeah, he's a great dude. Yeah, it's been a pretty cool. It's more than just like the cards. It's kind of like him choosing to sell them. I think we had to build that kind of bond through talking for quite a while, and it made it easier for him to part with them. Even though he hadn't looked at him, he still did appreciate him, and it wasn't so much that he didn't care about him. He knew what he had.
It's crazy. I just realized this now that it can go overlooked because the cards look almost identical until you look at the back. But the 98 Ultra, you have the platinum medallion rookie, and then you got the masterpiece rated a 10, which a 10 itself in those cards is damn near impossible. But then to be that card, it's just crazy.
Yeah, my brother bought that off of PWCC. It was they put it up, buy it now, best offer, and they put it up for I think $10,000. We offered 3,500. They declined because what they used to do on cards that they were trying to get a market value for. They would only do it once in a while. They would put the card up when they were on eBay still, and they would try to get offers and see what it was worth, and then they would list it. And then they listed it, we bid it, and we ended up winning, I think, for like $2,100. And at the time, that was, I think, in 2018. That was a lot of money for a card. Like 2017, 2018, like that was a lot of money. We had never even thought about spending anything close to that at that point. Obviously, things kind of changed shortly after that, but like just as recent as 2018, like that was unheard of.
Before we go to the next slide, we'll talk about the card, the playoff gold up at the top, 25.
Yeah,
the prestige.
Yeah. This is in my opinion. My brother and I both and actually it's funny. The guy that I bought the collection from, he will not sell me his playoff hobby gold. He just that thing ain't going anywhere. Like there's something to it. It pops. It's the gold on that card with that photo. It's if you ever see one in hand, you'll it's in my opinion the best Woodson card that from an aesthetic, the best Michigan Woodson card that there is. I think it's much better than the PMG. I like it more than the Super Rave. That's the card that I feel like my brother and I like. The hobby gold. That was the one. That was actually the last key card that I got. I actually just bought it off eBay maybe about 6 months ago. But that there in the last previous sale was my brother who bought that card in 2011. So between 2011 and 2024, there was 2 sales and we got both of them. and there was not one single sale in between that.
Wow.
One just recently sold the other day though, so there's been another
I saw
sale
that.
this
Yeah.
year. It was a great sale too. I know the guy
1,700.
that
It
bought
looks
it.
like. Have you seen? So I was just looking back at the sale of that Series One Ultra Masterpiece you got there, and it looks like 2 months afterwards there was the uh, Flair Showcase Legacy Row Zero and Row One masterpieces
Yeah.
sold back in September
I
2018. Was that
I
you
know
guys, or
who.
was that
No, I wish I had those. I know
okay?
who has them though. I've
Okay.
I've been in contact. I've been in contact with him. He's no, it's a collector out of California. Him and I, we've made a couple deals to help each other out, and
Okay.
I always tell him, like, when you get out, like, let me have it. Like, don't sell it to somebody else. Yeah, they both
Right.
sold very, very cheap too.
Yeah, it was definitely
Yep,
2018 pricing right there.
I missed both of them. I'm pretty upset about it.
You got the next one was it was the Raiders first stint with the Raiders, right? Or just the overall Raiders.
Yeah, so I think it's the first stint with the Raiders. I kind of just went with kind of my like 99 2000, and I'll kind of touch on why each one of these cards I think are killer. We'll start with the Star Rubies. It's the rarest one. They're out of 30, and I mean they're sharp, and the 2000s I think were out of 50, and these are out of 30, and it's like I said, you always see the rookie, and you never really see this. And this card sold for a pretty cheap price not too long ago. I have two of these, and I actually bought one for much more than I thought I would have paid for it. It sold for I think $400 a couple years, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and I was like, that seemed way too high at the time. The guy that bought it instantly puts it up for $3,000, and then as I saw it and I saw the price sticker 3,000, I go, you know what? He's not wrong. I kind of like, the more I looked at the card, the more I started to slowly like fall for it, and it's like it does. At a certain point, like, you never see the 99 star rubies of like the Hall of Famers. You just don't see them, and especially Woodson. If you see one, get it. 2000, moving right along to this one, 2000 Mirror Gold. Just picked this one up. I know two other major Woodson collectors don't have this card. I had never seen one. I was pretty convinced it didn't exist. Finally came across, maybe within the last 8 months, I'd say. I finally got it. I'm a Mirror Gold, Don Ross Elite. Like, those are, I like Pinnacle, I like Don Ross, like that. Those were late 90s. I collected hockey for this brief moment in like 96, 97. And it just totally like turned me on to like those cards. I think they worked really well for hockey. And I think for me anyways, I don't know if anybody else agrees. It worked for what I liked, and Woodson happened to be in those sets, and I don't know why. I mean, Pinnacle, Leaf certified, and then Don Ross Elite, they included Woodson, which is weird considering that he wasn't included in a lot of products you would think he would have been in.
Yeah, he was in a lot of Don Russ too. And when you mentioned that today, we were talking. You said he liked Don Russ, and now I looked up his cards, and now I know why, because he is in quite a bit of Don Russ stuff. It's like the obscure. Not that Don Russ is obscure, but at that time it was kind of like a little bit more obscure than the Topps products, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, there was something about, like, I think the Don Ross product, like it had like a quality to it. I don't know if it was like the gloss they used on it. It just seemed like there was more like like if they would use like gloss with holofoil. They would use, like, they were doing different things with like quality, I felt, versus like what the other companies were doing. It seemed like all their products were just like done with quality. until like 2002, 3, and they kind of started falling apart a little bit. But the late 90s, early 2000s, when Topps and all those companies were kind of like junking out, and just kind of just like mass producing again, it seemed like that's where the quality was. Like 99, 2000, Don Ross, Leaf, that's where the nice stuff, to me anyway, is what I thought. Obviously, moving to the PMG, I mean, that's just a perfect card. It's pretty much all you. It's just the perfect. I mean, the next 3 cards, I think, they just capture like the photo with the quality of the card. I feel like they're all just done perfectly for like a parallel, for a base card parallel. Like I think that just like the image selection, which I think when you're creating art, you're trying to create like an image. The photo has to be right, the design has to be right. It's like, it's not just the card's good and you put a player on it. It's like, if you pick the right photo with it, those are the cards that like 20 years from now people will still want, when the photo is in line with like how good the card design is.
That 99 PMG is pretty incredible with the gold and just the photo. Such a clean photo too for 99 cards. I mean, the quality of that photo on that foil is it's unbelievable. That goes more to that set. That 99 PMG set is still just underappreciated.
Sure.
I wouldn't say underrated necessarily. I mean, maybe it is, but underappreciated for sure.
Yeah, it does. It definitely doesn't get the. I mean, I feel like at this point, I almost feel like I would rather have the 99 than the 98. I think I'm so over the 98 PMG now. And as a Michigan fan, and as that was the card for the longest time, I think that and maybe I'm just burnt out of the set a little bit. It's not that I don't respect the set. I just think that it's been such a like hobby desired, it's in your face type of set for the last few years. I think I'm kind of burnt out on it. So I kind of like to, like I said, elite status is the best. So I mean, this card right here, I don't own it. I took this photo from a friend of mine. I have the aspiration, but I think this is the best Charles Woodson card, and I'm an elite simp. Like I think I said that earlier to you. Like this is what I like. Like Don Ross elite status. That is like my all-time. And the irony of it all is that's the card I don't have. So I have I pretty much every Woodson card ever made in my favorite set, in my favorite card, I don't own. So I do know where one's at.
And it's perfect. Yeah, perfect jersey, status is jersey number. So 24 is perfect because it makes it attainable yet scarce too, but not attainable for you since you don't have it. So maybe soon.
You can't find I like to think that the patience is gonna, it's gonna come back and I'm gonna get the 24 out of 24. And it's just gonna be like the perfect, like it was worth the wait. Because it would just it would be great. So if anybody out here watching has the 24 out of 24 of this card, let me get it.
What year is that?
99. Yeah, 1999. It's a perfect card, I think.
Is that score? What is that score? What is that? Is that the convention one?
Yes. Nope. This is just a score. So in 1999, there was a 10th anniversary artist proof, and they're out of 10. And the whole the scan doesn't capture it well. This is all like a holofoil that rips. Like it's real good. And that card in hand, it just has like a look to it, and it's something about, because it's such a low end card and it's so rare. I've always kind of been fond of mass produced cards that have super low print, that they put a little bit of effort into. So it has holofoil. It has like a good, like it's a really sharp card in hand. So if you have a player that you collect, I highly suggest going grabbing that card of the player. It's worth it.
That's beautiful.
Nice cards.
Take us through some of his top Packers cards.
my favorite player here.
Yeah,
So.
I figured.
Yeah.
So there's a reason for all of these. I was hoping that by putting this on there, I would help my chances of getting it from the owner.
Summon it.
Maybe the owner would trade it to me. But no, I think going back to what I think we touched on earlier, there's not a whole lot of Packer stuff. He has one finest, one Topps Chrome, one Bowman Chrome. I guess there's two. 2006, I'm kind of 50-50 on it. That's actually it is, but it isn't. But he only has one, and the mosaic, obviously, there's such a spike in interest in that card. For the longest time, you would never be able to find them. Kind of one of those sets that started popping back out once the popularity started coming. A lot of set collectors, a lot of people collected those early, and they're really tough to locate.
It's really odd that he's in the 2010, but then he's not in the 2011. Like their player choice for the 2011 is kind of odd, considering with all things considered. So that's the 2010 finest. Jose.
Yep. Yeah, like I don't understand how Charles Woodson wasn't in all of those sets. I mean, that was like peak
Right.
Charles Woodson. Like he was defensive player of the year. Like
Yeah.
and it wasn't just good the 1 year. Like he was good those 3 years from 09, really 08. You could say miss 08. So 09 through 2012, there was no better defensive player in football, and he's not even in. Like I'll never understand that.
Yeah, I mean, he's at the peak. This is like the peak of his career. And when all these new sets are coming out, like this era is like the start of the Panini era. You'd think that if they're going to include any, defensive player, they'd put the defensive player of the year, the best defender, like for multiple years, not just the flash in the pan. So,
yeah, it's I didn't collect the Packers at first. I'm a Lions fan, so it was like kind of like hard for me to collect. Like, but then I kind of like sat back and I like was like, oh man, I mean, he was guarding Calvin Johnson at the time. You know what I mean? It was just like it was such a good. He was so good still, and you still liked him as a Lions fan. And then kind of when I started like smoothing out like most of the Raiders stuff, I kind of was like, I kind of liked the Packers stuff, and it was like a guilty pleasure of mine because we were always bad. So it was like I liked the Packers because I hated them. It was like one of those hate, love, respect type like relationships with the Packers, and it was like, well, Woodson's like the one guy you can collect Packers if it's Woodson, especially if it's complementing the rest of your collection and tying together the career. So I kind of got this like pass to kind of like collect Packers cards because Charles Woodson. So it's pretty cool because a lot of those cards I had no idea really until I started really digging into them, like what was there, because I didn't collect that era at all. Like there was nobody that I was really a little bit of Matt Stafford. I think I collected a little bit in like 2009 and 10, but like I really didn't collect anybody in the NFL during that stretch. It was just kind of like tying up loose ends on the Michigan collection at that time with my brother, which a lot of that stuff was not necessarily the year of. It was kind of like whatever we would find when we would find it. So it was kind of when I started looking into what his Packers collection looked like. I'm like, oh, there's like nothing. I might as well just go get all of them. That was kind of just like was like a no brainer because it wasn't like an overwhelming like amount of cards to go chase. So it's actually been pretty fun getting into the Packer stuff, like surprisingly. Then obviously, I know this is one of your favorites, Brian. Gold Prism, 2 out of 10. It's one of the cards from the collection that were the 2 out of serial numbers.
You have 2 of those, don't you?
No, I wish.
Oh, you were going to get 2. You almost got a second one, right?
Yeah, I was working on a deal with the guy, and kind of last minute, I think he got cold feet. I think the price that he was thinking I wasn't ready to go to, but he also, I think, like thought I was thinking a lot less than what I was. We never got a number out, but I think it was like there was a deal that was in place, and I think that he started to think that that's all I wasn't going to offer money, and I could tell he didn't want to part with it because whenever someone tells you they graded it themselves, I think that that's a way of them saying they don't really want to trade it. So I
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
I just didn't want to press them. We've had a long-term relationship, so I didn't want to. But yeah, when I feel like anytime I've ever heard someone say I graded it myself, that's kind of like I don't want to sell it.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. And then I put this superfractor. Obviously, any superfractor is going to be a top card, but the part of it is like really any super. That kind of just like is a placeholder for all the superfractors. There's only 4 of them, so it's the 06 Chrome, the 09 Bowman, 10 Finest, 12 Chrome. There's 4 superfractors of wood. I mean, now there's the unlicensed superfractor, which I'm going to try to get. I guess I have to, but yeah, no, that's all you got for Woodson superfractors. So
Is that yours? That 2009?
That's the 09 Bowman. Yep.
No, do you have that? Is that yours?
Yep. Yeah, actually, kind of another one of those stories. A friend of mine, Dustin, him and I, we have talked for 3 or 4 years, and I saw that he had it, and kind of like mentioned that I would like it, and kind of one of those things like we just would talk cards once in a while. He's a one-of-one collector, more of a Michigan guy than a NFL guy, but we just kind of stayed in touch, and kind of timing kind of came to a point where he was like, I could kind of maybe use a couple bucks. Like, what are we talking about price? And I was just like, whoa. Like I thought me like kind of like coming, following up, was just always kind of like a joke. And then one day it was like kind of, yeah, I'm looking to sell it. And it was like, okay, let's, we kind of finally came to a deal, which super good dude. And I appreciated it a lot. It's definitely not one that's going to leave my collection, especially like I said, when someone doesn't want to sell it, but they want to sell it to you, I kind of feel guilt. I feel like any of the times that happens, if I were to sell it, I'd ask if they wanted to buy it back first. You know what I mean? It's like if you like just to then go and flip it. I just try not to do that. I have other cards I could just sell for money. It's like sometimes you don't want to. If you know they didn't want to sell it, but they were all right with giving it to you, I feel like you should always kind of offer it back to them. It's just kind of my own little rule.
What are these last 2 you got here?
So the reason these last 2 I have on is the only game-worn shield. This is the one that I told you the story kind of touched on. I reached out to a guy randomly, asked if he had any Woodson cards, and he goes, yeah, I do actually. He sent the picture of this, and I was like, wait a minute, it's his only game-worn shield of a Packers uniform during his playing day career.
What year was that? That's National Treasures, right?
Yeah, you know what? I want to say it's 2010.
Okay.
But it might be 2011.
Yeah, because the other one's the one we have is the 2011. That's the other autograph you were referring to from before. That's like his second autograph, right?
Yeah, 2011. But he doesn't have any. The reason why I put this Virtuoso up here. So here's another thing that most people don't know. He only has 2 on-card playing day autographs. Virtuoso, that one, and then the Bowman rookie. No other on-card autograph cards in 18-year playing career. Is that what he played?
Jeez.
Yes, 18 seasons.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe, right? No, I'm sorry. There's one more. It's the Panini Lux 2015, his last year, but I think it was released after the season. So I kind of like, it's a 2015 release, but he does have one more Raiders. So he has one Panini Raiders, one Panini Packers, and one rookie Raiders.
So this is going to be a really tough question. You have, I mean, these are all pretty much, you have every one of these cards except for like 1 or 2 that you said you're looking for. And then plus you have a ton of other cards. I mean, I'm going to put you on the spot, but like, can you narrow it down to, you don't have to rank them as your favorite, but like, could you narrow it down to like your 5 favorite out of your entire collection, if possible?
Of my collection, obviously the EC Future. I think it's, kind of the crown jewel. The Gem Master with, even though it's shared with my brother, I think that almost kind of makes it even more special, because like him and I are like kind of like we're both responsible for his collection's incredible. If you've never seen his collection at Go Blue Cards, he doesn't show as much as he should. It's deep and it's awesome. But I would say that like the Gem Masters, for obvious reasons, kind of think the Hobby Gold Prestige, that card to me, being a Michigan fan, I think there's a feel to it. Let's see here, a 99 PMG, and I'm gonna go with the 2000 or the 1998 Bowman Gold Auto, and the reason being is that was the last big card that I like. I'm missing one rookie card from the master set of his rookies. Besides one of ones, I have two of the one of ones. There's 9. I know where, or actually I have 4 of the one of ones if you count the ones with my brother. I know where 3 of them are, and I can get one more for sure. So I can almost get all the one of ones from his rookie season if the guy that has both of those Flair Showcase, if that guy trades the 2 cards because the same guy has both of those, then there's a good chance that I could potentially get all the one of ones, like minus 1 or 2 of them. But the Bowman Gold Auto, that was like the last big card that I needed. And again, it's his only autograph card.
What's that numbered out of? What's the gold auto?
It's estimated print run of about 20.
Okay.
And I just think that like it's the autograph of the first 12, 13 years of a guy's career. Like it's the one you want, right? And it's like there's something about that. And it's not the sexiest card by any means, but for some reason it was like the last, and I was very, even when I got the blue autos and the silver autos and now the gold auto, the autograph mattered. All of my autographs are perfect. And like that was like important for me as well, is like those, because like that's got to be the indicator. Like on that particular card, a good autograph mattered a lot for me, anyways. That was a part that I was really. So yeah, I put that as my number 5. And to be honest with you, I've never considered that a top 5 card until just right now. But I'm gonna die on that mountain. I'm gonna do it. Sounds good.
You picked 5. You picked 90s cards. It's a 90s card podcast.
Yep.
You picked 5 90s cards, and you didn't pick any Packers cards. You didn't have to do
there
that
we go.
either. So
I did my job. Yeah, that is my thing. And I would say that when I get that status, though, I'm pretty serious about that. That is the one card. It would be it'd be awesome. So if somebody on this podcast listening, they'll make a lot of money.
All right, so take us home here. What suggestions would you have for new collectors who are maybe new to 90s, or maybe new to a defensive player, or maybe they want to collect Woodson cards? Any tips that you could give them based on like your experiences?
So the biggest tip I would give is, if you're going to spend a bunch of money on something, do research and understand what you're going to spend money on. I think a lot of people just get into cards, start throwing money at stuff. They don't know what the hell they're even buying. So like take the time. There's great resources, whether you go on Beckett or if you go on TCDB, if you go on, just look up and then go to ComC, look up the sets, like be introduced to kind of like, there's a good visual, like, guide. Just type in set names, understand what they look like, try to find like what the cards might look like, and then get organized. Make a list of cards that you would like to have, price ranges, figure out like how you're gonna like afford it, if finances are a question, but getting organized and understanding what you're buying and kind of setting some kind of a there's so many cards of every player. You can get lost in the fuzz like very quickly. You can like just get organized, understand like a lane, and then like kind of like what I was mentioning about my Packers. I got towards the end of that lane with the Raider stuff, and then there's some then you can kind of like open up to like more stuff at that point. But don't just open like an entire. The guy's got 15 years of playing years cards. That's a lot of cards. Try to like get good at something and understand what you're buying, because I think a lot of people get in a little bit too deep. And what's your time preference? If you're trying to build a collection, it shouldn't be to have the best collection in a year. Start to get organized, make a checklist, check stuff off, and collections aren't built overnight. Take your time, have fun with it, and you never know, like when someone has a collection, ask them questions. You never know when they're going to end up wanting to get out. And because you were asking questions and you're staying in touch and you weren't just using them for cards, you were actually being a friend, they might give you an opportunity to buy some of their stuff. And that's case in point. Most of the cards that I've gotten were people that I talked to, didn't press them, like just was genuinely curious about their cards and talking. And a lot of them came my way as a result. And kind of, that's what I would say. Be organized, be friendly, and have a long time preference. Quit getting bored and then flipping them tomorrow. Like you're not going to build a collection that way. It doesn't work like that.
Right. Man, you gave some great insight. I really love seeing all the stuff in your PC, all the stuff that you're interested in. Really appreciate you coming on the show, man. And maybe we'll have you on in the future once you find that status card.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Yeah, this was fun, guys. You popped my my internet cherry. So
it's all I ever wanted, Gino.
So cheers. Yeah, hey man, right, man, you did it. I appreciate you guys.
All Thanks, right. Gino.
Yep.
Take care. Gino, thanks to Gino for coming on to the show, taking us through his Charles Woodson collection. I don't think I've seen anything like that. So it made me think, Brian, if you were to hyper focus and kind of super collect, I guess first question, one player generally, who would it be? But if you had to pick one defensive player, who would it be? And we'll talk just playing day cards.
I mean, if I had to just pick one player to super collect, it would have to be Favre. But I can now look at, I have like the unique, experience with it where I do collect, I guess, a defensive player with Clay Matthews. That's what I'm trying to do with him. And I will say, like, if I had to do a defensive player, it would actually probably be Woodson, because I love his cards. But like, I purposely don't do it because, as Gino mentioned, it's really tough to find his cards. Number one, I'd be competing with him and the other few people that really go in depth with this stuff, and it's not worth it. Like, it's too tough. So, but I love Clay Matthews would probably be second, and I do collect him, so I'm proud of that. But I think he brought up a good point too about the defensive players at the end. Do research. So if you're just starting to get into the hobby and maybe, you can be scared off a little bit from collecting defensive players. Like, there's people that probably come into like the football collecting space and they might be fans of defense and defensive players. But then the first thing you do when you start looking on Instagram and looking at like, influencers, they're talking about like Barry Sanders, Jerry Rice. I mean, even honest with Brett Favre, like they're the best players, right? Or even the modern day quarterbacks, those are highlighted. So like they might think, wow, I kind of just want to collect a defensive player, but they don't have a ton of cards. And the hobby people are telling me that these are the best players. So like, I shouldn't collect them. I should go buy like Joe Burrow or like a prospect. And that's what tends to happen with these people. And they lose money, they lose interest in it, and then they just never really get into it. So I would suggest, if you don't be scared off from collecting defensive players. If you like defensive players, do some research, find their best cards, and collect defensive players, because it's fun. And like Gino mentioned, it's a blessing and a curse. It's tough to find. There might not be a ton of cards, and you might have to wait periods of time to get their good cards. But the nice thing is, the blessing is that there's not a ton of cards to collect, and you won't get lost and discouraged. Like imagine jumping into collecting Peyton Manning. I mean, there's just you'd get overwhelmed. There's a million cards, right?
Yeah, I think the same way about Brady, and there's something to be said for like the fact that we're talking about how few big cards there are. Some of the defensive players aren't in every set. Like Woodson, he was the only defensive player in the '98 credentials. So it in some ways makes it a little bit more attainable in the sense of like, oh, there are fewer cards, but it also makes them harder to get. Because I mean, I was looking the other day, just looking on eBay, like searching junior Seau cards, and there's not a whole lot. Like you can't go on like you can find a Manning Grail, a Moss Grail at almost any time on eBay, but junior Seau or even Reggie White, like who is collected by a lot of people, just their stuff doesn't pop up. So Gino stuck with it for a long time. Really admire that. That's really cool. That's something I think any collector can take away from that conversation. So thank you to everyone for listening, sticking with us this far. I know that was a longer convo, but it was well worth it. So anyway, we will catch you next week.